What's up, everyone? It's Tim from Tim Plays a Game. Over the past day and a half since its reveal at E3, people have been talking about The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. One of the biggest topics they have been talking about is that when does the game take place on the Zelda timeline? If you don't know, the Zelda timeline is one of the most complex timelines in any video game series, because it starts out as a singular timeline which breaks into three separate timelines. We'll be talking about that more in a minute, but first, here's what we know about Breath of the Wild. Be warned, the rest of this video contains massive spoilers about most Zelda games, including Breath of the Wild. This is your spoiler alert. If you don't want to know any details about Breath of the Wild, stop this video now. So here's what we know about Breath of the Wild. First, Link has been asleep for at least 100 years. A great evil known as Calamity Ganon rose up and took over Hyrule. Ganon was sealed in Hyrule Castle, and he is now growing in power while sealed away. Link must defeat Ganon before it breaks free and destroys the world. Very few humans are seen, other than Link, the old man, and some sages. The Karoks from the Wind Waker are seen in this world. This is a big deal. The Master Sword is rusted for some reason. So let's talk about the Zelda timeline. The Zelda timeline is complex because it starts out as a singular timeline but later divides into three alternate timelines. Let's start by talking about the singular timeline. This begins with Skyward Sword for the Wii. This is the origin story about Link and Zelda, why they are important to the Zelda universe. Eventually, Link defeats a great evil known as the Demon King Demise. Before Demise dies, he curses Link, saying that his hatred, aka Ganon, will follow Link and his descendants for all eternity. This is followed by the events of the Minish Cap and Four Swords, which is not worth talking about since they are not important to this video. This is then followed by the Ocarina of Time for the N64. Link has to stop a great evil, again known as Ganondorf, aka Ganon, from seizing control of the Triforce and taking over the Sacred Realm. This is where things get complex. After the events of Ocarina of Time, three separate timelines exist because time travel is never simple. First is the timeline where Ganon is successful in defeating Link, seizing control of the Triforce and entering the Sacred Realm he is sealed. The timeline is called the Fallen Hero timeline. Second is a timeline where Link was successful in defeating Ganon in Ocarina of Time after traveling 7 years into the future to do so. This is the timeline Link returned to 7 years prior to Ganon's defeat, before Ganon ravaged Hyrule. Link warned Zelda about Ganondorf was going to do, and Ganondorf was imprisoned. This timeline is called the Child Link timeline. Third is the timeline that Link had to abandon when he went back to his timeline 7 years in the past. This is the timeline where Ganon was defeated and sealed away after he ravaged Hyrule. This timeline is called the Adult Link timeline. First, let's talk about the Fallen Hero timeline. This timeline consists of the game following games in chronological order from earliest to latest. A Link to the Past for the SNES, Oracle of Ages and Seasons for the Game Boy Advance, Link's Awakening for the Super NES, A Link Between Worlds for the 3DS, Triforce Heroes for the 3DS, Legend of Zelda NES, and Zelda 2 Adventures of Link for the NES. The Child Link timeline consists of the following games in chronological order from earliest to latest: Majora's Mask for the N64, Twilight Princess for the GameCube and Wii, and Four Swords Adventures for the GameCube. The Adult Link timeline consists of the following games in chronological order from earliest to latest: Wind Waker for the GameCube, The Phantom Hourglass for the DS, and Spirit Tracks for the DS. Now, let's get into the theory here. The Breath of the Wild in relation to the singular timeline. Breath of the Wild could not have taken place before Skyward Sword because Hyrule and Ganon did not exist until after the events of Skyward Sword. Breath of the Wild could not have taken place before Ocarina of Time because the Karoks are descendants of the Kokiri, which existed in Ocarina of Time. Because of these facts, Breath of the Wild could not have taken place in the singular timeline. In relation to the other three remaining timelines, because the Karoks only took on a plant-like appearance after Hyrule was transformed into the Great Sea, and as seen in Wind Waker, This rules out Breath of the Wild taking place in the Fallen Hero and Child Link timelines. The Karoks' mission was to plant trees around the world to get the Great Sea to retreat. It can be assumed that the Karoks were successful since there's no Great Sea in Breath of the Wild. This means that Breath of the Wild could not take place before Wind Waker or Phantom Hourglass because it is a direct sequel of Wind Waker with some of the characters. Also, both Wind Waker and Phantom Hourglass have the Great Sea in it. Spirit Tracks takes place 100 years after Phantom Hourglass. This does not give enough time for the events of Breath of the Wild to take place. Therefore, it is assumed that Breath of the Wild takes place after the events of Spirit Tracks. So, in conclusion, Breath of the Wild does take place after the events of Spirit Tracks on the Adult Link timeline. Ganon from Wind Waker revived himself after the events of Spirit Tracks and took over Hyrule, which is why he is known as Calamity Ganon. Ganon couldn't be defeated for whatever reason and was sealed inside Hyrule Castle. Link was put into a sleep chamber to be awakened in case it looked like Ganon would escape from a sealed Hyrule Castle and destroy the world. So the only question left is, what do you think about Breath of the Wild and my theory about its place on the Zelda timeline? Let me know on the comments section below. I'm Tim from Tim Plays a Game, signing off, and good night.